couldn't have done it without my best bubble-blowing buddy.
Guess who's back again. SpongeBob, big yacht pants, okay. Yeah, so I just saw the new SpongeBob movie in theaters, and I'm gonna talk about what I thought of it. Man, what an interesting past half decade SpongeBob has had in terms of movies. There was the 2020 movie Sponge on the Run, which was originally set to be out in theaters, but then went to streaming only in the majority of the world due to COVID, and was only out in theaters in like a small section of the planet or something like that, and it didn't get very good reviews. I thought it was okay, decently enjoyable if you turn your brain off when you watch it, but it was basically culprit kind of slop, kind of a backdoor pilot for Camp Coral, the spinoff that nobody liked. And I'm saying that as someone who isn't one of those Sponge rumors that say, oh, Camp Coral is disrespectful to Steven Hillenburg's legacy. I don't say that, but I certainly like Camp Coral. Then after that, we had the Sandy Cheeks movie in 2023, I think, or 2024, and nobody likes that because it was abysmal and an abomination. I don't like it very much. But then the same year, and by the way, that movie leaked, and the Plankton movie that came out after that movie also leaked, but it was actually pretty dang good. I thought it was pretty good. And now comes this movie, the first SpongeBob movie that was actually in theaters, not released to streaming since basically the second movie, excluding the small areas that the third movie managed to come out during the pandemic in theaters. And so was this movie any good? Well, I liked it. In fact, I had so much fun watching it. I had a blast watching it, honestly. It was a very fun movie. And I've been seeing some people online saying that it's actually even better than the first SpongeBob movie. And I don't know if I would go that far. I would have to rewatch it again before making a statement as big and out there as that. But I would say that this was probably the best SpongeBob movie since the first movie. That is, if you don't count the SpongeBob musical Live on Stage, which does technically count as a TV movie since it's a TV movie version of the musical, but a lot of people might not count that as a SpongeBob movie. I do, but excluding that movie, the SpongeBob movie Social SquarePants was, I would say, the best movie made in the SpongeBob franchise since the original movie, and that movie was fantastic. But yeah, I really did enjoy this movie. I kind of wish it would go back to the traditional 2D animated SpongeBob like the first movie and the majority of the second movie, but seeing how it's still kind of unusual to see CG animated or 3D animated, whatever the correct term of that would be in this case, that version of SpongeBob is still kind of unusual, minus the Camp Coral spinoff and I guess you could say the video games and the spin-off movies, all of which will release only on streaming. I was actually excited to see this version of SpongeBob, like a fully 3D animated SpongeBob on the big screen. Even if I do prefer overall the 2D animated version of SpongeBob, this was a nice change of things and I enjoyed it. The animation did look pretty good. It looked more like SpongeBob than Sponge on the Run, the third movie, but I also really love how that movie looks too because of how stylized it is. It's just not the most SpongeBob looking, but it's amazing too. I don't know what one I like better visually, because the animation snob in me wants to say, oh, well, that one is the best looking one of the two. But this one also just like feels a lot like SpongeBob brought into 3D, rather than a stylized 3D movie that happens to be about SpongeBob. I also saw some people saying that the character arc SpongeBob goes on in this movie was basically the same one he went on in the first movie, and to a certain extent I kind of agree, but not fully. I feel like that kind of does a bit of a injustice to the story of this movie, because like half of it is kind of the same as the first one, where it's SpongeBob in this movie realizing that he doesn't have to try to be something he's not to be a big guy, and then in the first movie it was SpongeBob realizing he doesn't have to try to be something he's not to be more than just a kid, and that it's okay to be a kid. So it is kind of similar, but one thing that this movie has that the first movie doesn't really have is a focus on the relationship between SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs. How Mr. Krabs is kind of a parental type of father figure to SpongeBob, not just his boss, not just someone who is greedy and loves money. In fact, other people online pointed out that in this movie, it's not even brought up the fact that Mr. Krabs loves money. And some would say, oh, that's out of character. No, it's not out of character. It's just not focusing on that specific character trait, but instead focusing on other character traits of Mr. Krabs that I and many others feel like can often be overlooked, especially after the first movie came out, especially in the post-movie era of SpongeBob. And I really appreciated how this movie focuses on it, and I think he did a very good job, especially near the end of the movie, how we get Mr. Krabs apologizing to SpongeBob and then them teaming up to defeat the Flying Dutchman, who, by the way, I thought was very good in the movie too. It's kind of a shame that they didn't get the guy who usually plays the Flying Dutchman in the show to come back to play the character, but they did get him to play the character in the recent video game that came out, which looks pretty good. And the guy so has it. I haven't played the game, but from the clips and whatnot, I can definitely tell that he's so very talented and definitely so has it. But I can see why they went with the approach of getting Mark Hamill to play the Flying Dutchman in this movie, because the main thing is, while he's not only a very talented voice actor, I mean, he literally played the Joker in Batman the Animated Series. The best version of the Joker on screen, in my opinion at least. But he also is an actual live-action actor too, and in this movie, they had the Flying Dutchman in live action near the end of the movie. Slight spoiler, but it's also shown in the trailer, I believe. And he nails it. He does a very good job. He doesn't sound exactly like the main guy who usually voices the Flying Dutchman. I wish I knew his name. It's kind of blanking on me. I'm blanking on it. If I had to compare the voices, I definitely prefer the original voice of the Flying Dutchman, not Mark Hamill doing it. But as a live action Flying Dutchman, he was very good, and I can see why they chose him. He looks like what I would expect the Flying Dutchman to be in live action. And even though I don't really love his Flying Dutchman voice as much as the voice of him in the actual original series, he was so very good voicing the character. And yeah, it was just a very good movie. I definitely enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. SpongeBob Big Guy Pants Okay. And yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I plan on doing a actual scripted review of this movie at some point in time this year. I want to actually talk about every single SpongeBob movie that came before this one too as actual reviews, probably within the next few months actually. So stay tuned for that. And if you enjoyed this first impressions video of the SpongeBob movie, Social SquarePants, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe and all of that incredible stuff. Thank you for watching. Cartoon Post out.